Hi, everyone, and good morning to the first session of Wednesday's Green Careers Week Festival. I'm delighted to be joined by a guest that I will introduce in a minute, but I'm Brian. I work for the Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management, who represents the workforce who care for nature within the UK and Ireland. So Green Careers Week Festival is a celebration of all different green careers, and we're covering a different type of role and organisation every day. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm just going to, before I introduce our presenter today, I'm just going to leave the QR code on the screen there for a second. So our presenter will be using this to read your answers or read your questions to her at the end, should I say. Thank you to those who have put in their postcodes so far. I can see that we have schools from Penrith, Preston, London, Essex, and Nottingham, and there may be more as well being added as we speak. One of the postcodes is NG, which is quite telling, really, because this morning is all about energy and how we can create energy and supply energy, but also protect nature at the same time. So I'm delighted to welcome Katie Andrews, who's the Nature Delivery Officer for Southern and Scottish Energy Transmission. Katie, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's absolutely a pleasure to be with you all today. So I'll kickstart by sharing my screen and get straight into some fun around nature. So I hope you can all see that screen now.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's brilliant. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the session on how people protect nature when we build for energy. So I'm joining you today from a very rainy Inverness in the Highlands of Scotland, and this is where I'm based for work. And as Brian mentioned, I work for Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks transmission. So as you can see from those photos online on the screen, we are in charge of all the sort of large towers, overhead lines, and substations across the north of Scotland. And within England, it's the National Grid. And then within southern Scotland, it's Scottish Power Energy Network. So today we're going to talk through some of the different habitats that we find on land and at sea. And unfortunately, my colleague Ashley wasn't able to join us today. She's feeling a little bit poorly, so I am going to do my best to cover some of those marine aspects of today's session. So bear with me on that aspect. But we hopefully have a very fun activity for you all to complete. So kickstart. There we go. So who are we? So first off, my name's Katie, as I said, and my journey to where I am now started with a love for the outdoors and enjoying nature, and that passion has led me to working around the world and studying geography at university and learning all about how we can protect our planet and the species and sort of habitats that we find within them. My first job was exploring how we map different environments and the ways that we can care for our natural spaces. And today, as Brian said, I work as a nature delivery officer, and this is all about sort of working to protect nature and restore vital habitats. So helping to ensure these spaces thrive for the future. And I'll do a quick introduction of Ashley as well. Unfortunately, she's not here, but she is my marine counterpart within SSEN transmission. So Ashley has an amazing journey, and it's a shame that she's not here to share that. But from the beginning, she's had a deep love for the ocean and dolphins. And this passion led her to explore marine biology, so the fascinating study of life in our oceans. Along the way, she's had some incredible experiences going out on boats, witnessing whales, sharks, polar bears, and even penguins in their natural habitat. But it didn't stop there. She's contributed to protecting ocean life and making a real difference in preserving these ecosystems for the future. So it's a really inspiring story of how this is, how she's got to where she is in the marine space. So I thought it would be useful to first sort of give you a little taster of what the activity we have planned for you all today, and just to give you a chance to have a think and have it in the back of your heads when I'm running through the session and looking at these different habitats. So what we were thinking is that you could pick one habitat or species that you found interesting during sort of our session, and do a little bit more research around that species or habitat, and design a really fun sort of poster and leaflet, with the intention of sort of communicating that key message around why the habitat or species is important to you. And before we kick off, I think it's really helpful to actually understand what a habitat is. So a habitat is a natural home or environment where plant or animal lives. So it provides everything the living thing needs to survive, like food, water, shelter, and space. And in terms of what a species is a group of living things that are similar and can have babies together. So all humans belong to the same species, and so is the same for lions, all oak trees, and frogs of the same kind. So get the idea of what a species is. So without further ado, let's dive into our first habitat that me as a nature delivery officer and my colleagues run into quite a lot across the north of Scotland. Not as much as we would like, because trees have been declining over the last couple of centuries. But UK woodlands now cover approximately around 13% of land area in the UK, and are estimated to soak up around 21 million tonnes of carbon dioxide each year. So this is the equivalent to the yearly emissions from about 4.5 million cars. So an absolute huge amount of carbon dioxide. So it's such an important habitat for us to protect. And these vary from ancient woodlands, ones that have been around for hundreds of years, to broadleaf woodlands that drop their leaves during winter months. And then also in the Highlands, where I am, we've got these ancient Caledonian forests. And what we see more and more is these new plantations of woodlands that are basically planted for commercial use. So for the furniture that we use, and other sort of uses as well. So as I said, UK woodlands are vital habitats for wildlife, hosting around 326 species that depend on oak trees alone. So that's just one species of tree in a whole woodland. So you can imagine just how much life there is in these areas. And as you can see on the screen, so this is an example of a veteran tree. So we've got ancient trees, and these can be veteran trees, but not all veteran trees are old enough to be ancient. And veteran trees are survivors that basically develop some of the features found on ancient trees. However, veteran trees are only quite early on in their life. So what we can see is it's got this amazing sort of feature around it, a curved trunk that goes back into the ground. So really interesting if you come across one of them in your local woodlands. So what species do we find within woodlands? So first off, we've got buzzards. So these are large birds with broad, rounded wings and a short tail. And what's really noticeable about a buzzard is it's got a beak which is sharp, but it's also hooked. So if you can sort of spot them on a clear day, they're usually soaring high in the sky, circling around the sky, using their massive wings to help them glide. So they're nature's gliders, which is what we like to refer to them as. We've then got ladybirds, quite an easily identifiable species, and these are the superheroes of the gardens. They eat a huge amount of natural material and help break down natural matter, so have a really important role within our ecosystems. Then we've got an adder, which is a type of snake, and this is the most northerly occurring snake species in the world. It's been even recorded within the Arctic Circle. And the adder is the only venomous snake in the UK, but it's very shy and usually slithers away when it hears you coming. So you might not see one in your lifetime. Then we've got badgers. So this is actually the biggest land predator in the UK. And badgers live in underground homes called setts, which have multiple rooms and tunnels. So it's almost like a little badger mansion underground. And then finally, obviously, these are not just all the species you find in woodlands, but I thought I'd do a little variety of different species that you can find. We've got the robin. So I thought I'd include this one because Christmas is coming up. And as you know, it is a great symbol of Christmas because these birds usually come out around this time of year. And they're really sort of recognizable from their sort of reddy orange breast. And to match their breast, they are pretty fiery in terms of their personality as well. So the next on-land habitat that I had to share with you today are grasslands. So grasslands have been around for a very long time and are a really important part of our history. So after the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, the land left by mountain glaciers was empty. So small plants and mosses started to recolonize. And over time, more plants moved in, grasses, herbs, flowers, creating these beautiful meadows that we see today, and you can see on the screen there. So today, over 40% of the UK land is covered in grass. So it differs a lot from grass that is more agricultural, so land that we use for food or grazing for cows and sheep. And then there's also a huge amount of different species within lowland meadows, which you can see on the screen there. And meadows are home to hundreds of different plants and animals, including bees, butterflies, and even rare wildflowers. So they help pollinators survive and keep our planet healthy. In terms of the species that we find within grasslands, and it's not limited again to just these ones that you can see on the screen. But first up, we've got the hare. So they can run up to 45 miles per hour. So they use their powerful back legs to zoom across fields, and you might see them popping around. And they differ slightly from rabbits because they've got these really, really large back legs. We've got butterflies. So on the screen, you can see the common blue butterfly, which is really distinct and has these beautiful blue wings. And then we've got the barn owl. So barn owls are really interesting because they've got special feathers that allow them to fly about at night really silently, so they can sneak up to their prey without being heard, just like little ghosts in the night. And then we've got bumblebees. So here we've got the white-tailed bumblebee, which is one of the most common types of bumblebees. And they can beat their wings 200 times per second, making them excellent pollinators. And they even buzz at a special pitch that allows them to shake any pollen that's caught in their hairs, which is really cool, I think. And then finally, we've got the grasshopper. So grasshoppers are really cool as well. They actually make music by rubbing their legs together, legs against their wings. So they're like their own little instrument, which is pretty cool, I think. So now we're going to look at some marine habitats. So this was going to be Ashley's section. I'm no marine expert, but thankfully she's given me some notes so we can still cover it today. So first up, we've got the deep ocean. So these are the darkest, coldest parts of the ocean, far below where sunlight can reach. On the UK coast, the deep sea starts about 100 miles down. So west of Scotland, there are some really deep sections of ocean. And because it's so deep and dark, we find such strange creatures, as I come on to in the next slide. And what's really fun is that some of these deep sea animals make their own light. So they're bioluminescent, like underwater glow sticks. And I think Ashley's put in a pretty cool little video that I'll try and show. So you can see. So you can just imagine little fish and different species under the water having a little party. So some of those species include giant squids. They have the largest eyes of any animal in in the animal kingdom, up to 10 inches across, making it easier for them to spot predators. Then we've got the Greenland shark, which can live for over 400 years, making them the longest living vertebrate known to science. We've also got the female anglerfish, which has a bioluminescent lure on her head used to attract prey. Pretty scary, and definitely wouldn't want to come across one of them. Then we've got the yeti crabs. So they've got hairy pincers that host bacteria, which may farm and eat. So it's a rare example of symbologists in the deep sea. And then finally, we've got sperm whales, which have the largest brain of any animal on Earth, and it weighs up to 9 kilograms, which is so heavy, as you can imagine. So the second habitat Ashley was going to speak about was rocky shores. So these are places where the land meets the sea. So it's full of rocks and pools, and they get covered and uncovered by the tides. So they're really fun to go and explore because you find all these little species that live within them, which I'll come on to soon. And they are all around sort of the coastline of the UK, and in particular areas like Cornwall, Wales, and across sort of the west coast of Scotland as well. And a fun fact, animals that have to survive both underwater and out in the air. So it's like living in two different worlds, which is really interesting. And species that we can find here. So first off, we've got the gull. So these are highly intelligent birds known to use tools and mimic behaviors to steal food. I'm sorry if anyone's been subject to a gull attack for food. Always be careful when you are eating outside, as they're very close by and will definitely try and dive for a piece of your sweet treat. So they're really fantastic animals and really sort of interesting. Then we've got the breadlet anemone. So they can retract their tentacles and close up completely when they're exposed to air during low tide. So this allows them to survive out of water for hours. We've then got the harbour seal, which can sleep underwater, and it does so by shutting off one half of its brain at a time, a process called unihemispheric slow wave sleep, which is very, very cool. And then we've got limpets. So they've got incredibly strong teeth made of goethite, a mineral harder than any other materials found in nature. So it's one of the strongest biological materials ever tested. And then finally, we've got the ballenis, and they can survive out of water for short periods by breathing through their skin and the lining of their mouth. So that was a really quick run through of all the species and some of the habitats. So now it's over to you to pick sort of a species or a habitat that I've spoken about today in this very short session. but hopefully it's given you a flavour of what sort of you can find across the UK, both on land and in the sea. So you have a chance to dive deep into these amazing habitats. So your task is to choose one habitat or species that stood out during the presentation and explore it in more detail. And what we really want you to think about is this is your chance to be creative and show why protecting nature really matters. So, are you ready to get started? I'll now hand over to any questions that there might be. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see everyone. But I hope it's been interesting and you've enjoyed learning more about some of the habitats and species that we want to protect and the special places that are all around us across the UK. So your work, your posters, your leaflets could inspire others to take care of nature too. So are you ready to make a difference? And I'll open it up to any questions now as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Katie, for that really interesting introduction into the work that you do and the species that you work with. So interesting to find out that these careers often exist outside of the charities like the Wildlife Trust that we might, perhaps know better. So I did add a sneaky extra question about what habitats or species that you mentioned did you find the most interesting, but because I added it during the talk, many people might not have seen that. So the link is in the chat if you want to ask Katie some questions. I do have a couple of questions that have come through already. But just to mention, the resource and the activity that Katie was referring to can be found and downloaded from the Green Jobs for Nature Green Careers website as well. So you'll find it there as a downloadable resource, as you will other resources and a Green Jobs for Nature quiz that you can find out which role might suit you based on your interests. So, right, let's have a look. Which animal do you come across most commonly?
Oh, it's a good one. So, one that I've spoken about today is badgers. So, badgers are a protected species in the UK, and when we're doing overhead lines or we're building substations, we come across them quite a lot. They're quite prevalent across, well, quite we see them in large numbers across the UK. And because they're protected, we need to give extra sort of attention to how we basically sort of tackle and be able to protect them. So I would say badgers are one that we come across sort of most often, I would say, and we've got to put special measures in place to ensure that we're protecting their habitat, so their homes, their sets, as I was talking about, but also sort of allowing them to have sort of the food that they rely on as well. So protecting the wider habitats that they live within and to allow them to keep sort of providing sort of those services that they contribute to the wider animal system.
Amazing. I love badgers as well. But despite 25 years of working in the sector, I've never seen one in the
Yes.
wild alive. So have you got any ideas of where people might see signs of badgers?
Oh, it's really good, a really good question as well. So what you can do, you can look out for, it sounds a bit grim, but you can look out for badger poo. And you can have a look to see whether there's any sort of badger paw marks and if there's any sort of clawing. You might even stumble across a badger set, and these can be found sort of on the edges of woodlands a lot of the time. And what they do is sort of they burrow down and they use sort of the root system of the trees to sort of navigate in between sort of the roots of the trees, which is really cool. So sometimes you can see little holes that have been dug, and if you can sort of notice the scat that has been sort of identified, then that's basically badger poo. Then you have found yourself a set or a home of a badger, which is really cool.
Amazing. Great tip. Thank you. Okay, the questions are flying in now. So I'm going to ask you a double barrel question about animals again, because we've got quite a few coming there. So I'm going to ask a two-pronged question. What's the rarest animal you have seen? And what's your favorite species?
Oh, very good ones. So the rarest animal that I've seen, I once came across a water vole, which are very, very notoriously difficult to try and find. I know people that have worked with water voles for years and have never seen one before. But I actually saw one up in the Highlands of Scotland, and I was so lucky. So that's probably the rarest one that I've seen in the wild anyway. And then my favorite species, oh, I just have to love bumblebees and what they do for nature. They're just such incredible species, and they just do so much for us, from sort of pollinating all our pollinating our natural environment and helping the food that we grow. They've got so many different services that they give us for free. So I would say bumblebees, and also I love the color yellow.
Okay, well that kind of works then, and it's set off nicely by the black stripes alongside it, isn't it, as well? The yellow
Exactly.
really pops.
Yeah.
So I'm very jealous of you seeing a water vole as well. Often people don't see water voles; they just hear a plop in the water as the water vole swims away from them. So that's really cool. Okay, question here: what does a day look like in your job?
Oh, that's an interesting one as well. So my days can be very, very varying. Sometimes, if it's a good day, I get to go out to a site to see any restoration that we can do. So, meeting with partners. So, currently, we've got a partnership with the RSPB, so the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. And we're working with them on one of their reserves down in the Loch Lomond and Trossachs. And what a site visit might involve is going out, seeing what sort of a partner wants to do with their land. It might be farmland that they want to convert to trees, or more of a lowland meadow, as you saw in sort of the session. So that's if I have the opportunity to go out. A lot of the time is more actually emails, replying to people, and basically sort of seeking out new opportunities that we can look to enhance nature across the north of Scotland. So it's really varied. And I think one thing to note is I was never aware of this job when I was going through uni or in primary school or secondary school. So there's actually so many jobs within nature, and it's becoming more and more important. And there's more jobs becoming available, which is really exciting. So it's so good that we've got this session today and this whole week dedicated to sort of green jobs. And yeah, massive shout out to Saeem for organising this.
It's an amazing plug for the purposes of being here as well. So, just moving on to that, actually. So, you've mentioned your career and obviously school. So, the questions here. So, relating to your career, what job did you want to do when you were a kid?
Oh, that's a good one. So right at the beginning, for some reason, I really wanted to be a police person. So I really wanted to be in the police and sort of helping people in the community. And then the more I learned about our natural world and sort of all the various sort of things that are going on to destroy it at the moment, and realize the importance of trying to protect it, and that role, then I always wanted to work in sort of the nature space, and I've had a bit of a wiggly journey to get here. And yeah, just really glad that now sort of I'm on sort of the career of working with ecologists and working to sort of restore our nature across the north of Scotland.
Amazing. I love that. And I think there's, I wanted to be a police officer as well. I didn't, I wanted to be a sheriff specifically,
Nice.
even though we
I
don't
like
have them. It's because I had a sheriff's badge and I felt that's the way I think. But I guess it's one of those things often when we're younger, we want to be the people that we see around us, and nurses,
exactly.
doctors. But ecologists and rangers aren't really visible a lot of the time to us, I guess. Do you think there's a lot about the visibility of careers and you've already underpinned the work that we're doing this week to highlight those?
I think it's yeah, absolutely. I think when you're younger, it's sort of you become a doctor, become someone within the community, someone you see, as you said. So you don't hear about the people that are out there protecting nature and sort of caring for nature, caring for animals. And I remember when I started my geography degree, it was like, oh, you'll become a teacher, and that was the only career sort of opportunity apparently that was open to me. And then once I got into the depths of it, there's so many different activities and so many careers that you can take. So I'm such a strong advocate for the study of geography because it's so wide ranging, and employers actually love it because it is so wide ranging. It offers you so many different skills. And if you want to do sort of further studies, which I didn't, I went straight into the workplace and sort of have worked my way up rather than doing sort of studies afterwards to become more targeted in ecology. So yeah, it's a really interesting one, and definitely something I wish I'd heard when I was younger so that I could get more involved. There's so many opportunities to volunteer in nature as well. So many amazing charities out there, Scottish Wildlife Trust, RSPB, National Trust, and they're all sort of doing amazing things to promote and sort of restore our nature.
That's a really good shout. And there's a really good website called Countryside Job Service, which contains loads of volunteering links on it as well. And you can select by region. So if anybody's interested in looking into that, so the countrysidejobservice.com would be the place to go. Okay, another career related one. So who inspired you?
Oh, so it's a very it's a classic, but definitely David Attenborough. I think he is such a fantastic communicator and has been able to connect so many people with sort of the wider issues of conservation and protecting sort of our natural places and spaces. And I think doing it through imagery and things that really connect with you, that's been amazing. I mean, the Planet Earth two that came out while I was studying geography, and I was like, I just need to be in a career sort of helping to save these natural environments. So it was a massively inspirational sort of series. So definitely worth a watch if you haven't already.
I wonder how many of our careers David Attenborough is responsible for, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm good. There's another couple of career questions here about education choices beforehand, but I just want to ask this question first. If you could bring any animal from around the world to live in the UK, what would it be? And in our class, they've put we would choose a manatee.
A manatee. Oh, I love that. Um, oh, I it's a really difficult one actually because there's so many uh, really interesting animals out there, and I would have to say a giraffe. They're just so interesting and so yeah, I just find them so fascinating, and they've got such amazing personalities as well. And it would just be so iconic to see them roaming around the Highlands of Scotland.
I agree. That would be cool. Mine would be an echidna. They
Nice.
have the feet at the back that go backwards. Their feet look like they could travel in either direction, and they're a mammal that carry eggs in a pouch as well. They're just odd. They've got everything
Oh,
else, but yeah,
there we
manatee.
go.
Yeah, echidnas, manatees, and giraffes. The UK.
Yeah.
You'd wonder where you'd landed, wouldn't you, if you came back from
What a
holiday and saw that?
combination.
It would be an amazing combination. Okay, so back to career development. So I'm going to ask these as a double prong one as well because they fit nicely together. So, what education do you need to do your job and jobs like yours? And what subjects should you study to pursue a career like yours?
Okay, so in terms of what we need in terms of skill set, so for my specific job, uh, being personable and being able to connect with people is really important. So we've got our technical side of the team that focuses on more of the ecology and really sort of dives into the policies that are out there and does a lot of our ecological reviews of surveys that come into the business. So I think for my side of the house, it's looking at the possibilities. So I think having that open mind of knowing what different habitats are and what is needed within them to be able to take them from one point, which might be in a poor condition, it might be sort of heavily sort of damaged, and being able to restore it and knowing sort of the steps to take. So I think in terms of what we need and what I've needed for this career path is sort of a bit being able to sort of communicate with different people, I think that's really important, and also sort of having that technical experience of being out in nature, just a passion as well for it. I think coming across as someone who loves nature and it's embedded into them, they want to see the right thing done by nature. So it's having that passion, which I think is really important. And in terms of those sort of skills and what to study, as I said, sort of getting out in your local community and getting sort of real life experience of planting a tree or walking through a meadow and sort of looking at all the different species and animals that are within them, because then that encourages you to then do some desk-based research and look up on your computer what was that I saw, and taking photos. I think that's the really exciting thing about technology now, is that there's so many apps and so many resources that you can tap into to help you learn more about the species that are out there. So I would say, yeah, getting out in nature, that's definitely something that I would advocate for. And then also sort of building up your ecology, your ecology knowledge. So obviously, Saeem, you've got incredible resources out there, going to trainings, webinars, and just learning more and about it. So no specific skills. It's quite wide ranging, and that's what I definitely have learned, is that you don't need to be good at everything. It's sort of just having a knowledge, and if you've got passion for a specific thing, then following that, because that will help you learn what you need to be able to do your job correctly.
Amazing. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Passion is key, isn't it? So you mentioned you had a degree. So is a degree absolutely required?
It's Yeah, so I think we're in a really exciting time where I don't think degrees are everything. I think one thing the SSEN transmission is really advocating for is those opportunities to come on as an apprentice and sort of coming through uh, straight from school and sort of learning the trade as you go, and not sort of just having sort of like a paper certificate of a university degree. I think it definitely helps, but I and it was definitely pushed when I was at school, and it was sort of the top choice of you have to go to uni. But I think we are entering sort of a generation where it's not the be all and end all, and you can gain the experiences by being in the workplace, and you can sort of follow that career. I know a lot of people that who want to become involved in environmental management or ecology, that have maybe started off as a ranger and sort of within their national park or in their local area, and have worked through, and then it's sort of fed into a job as sort of an ecologist or an environmental manager. So there's so many different options for after school, but as I said, sort of getting out in nature and building that passion, I think will take you a long way.
Amazing. So yeah, loads of different pathways. And it was a good time to plug the fact that Scotland have just re-released their apprenticeships. So there is a wildlife conservation one that's tied there. In England, we have countryside management apprenticeships, and there's a brand new one in ecology coming out next year as well. And Wales are looking at their apprenticeship offer, but there are some there too. Land-based colleges are a really good place to get hands-on experience too. Some to consider. And just going back to Katie's other point about showing passion and building confidence, perhaps as well. Sometimes it can be hard to see, no matter how old you are, how to do those things. But obviously, at school, you might have the opportunity to join an eco committee, to join different teams and committees, or speak to your school about planting more trees, or if there's a park near you, to get involved in to do that as well. So there will be opportunities around them. Sometimes you might have to make them, but you will find opportunities around you. Okay, Katie, we are well over time. I'm just going to ask one more question because obviously the
Right.
enthusiasm is there, so we can put it across to you. Which companies do you need help from to protect nature?
Oh, so I think as best as we can, we're not environmental experts, so we rely quite heavily on our nature experts. So various different sort of partners and organisations across sort of the UK. So I mentioned a couple, sort of RSPB, we have a partnership with Scotland The Big Picture, which is a rewilding charity, and they're trying to sort of see how we can rewild our spaces while considering our people and the people that have formed these places as well. So really sort of linking in that environment with also culture. So we really do rely on sort of these natural experts and ecology experts to come with us and sort of keep us on the right track. And that's why sort of myself and my team has been building over the last couple of years, because we do bring in those sort of skills and that expertise to help guide the organization in the right way. And what's really exciting about transmission is that we have really sort of groundbreaking commitments to nature. We're one of the only organisations to be working towards biodiversity net gain in Scotland, and this is something that's in operation across England at the moment. It's written into planning, and this is something that we've taken forward within Scotland as we see the sort of benefit of being able to demonstrate measurable improvements to the natural world. So yeah, really leaning on sort of other organisations like RSPB and Scotland Big Picture, and we're trying to sort of onboard and work with other nature experts as well.
Amazing, thank you. So we go further together, and just to highlight for anybody who might be listening who has really enjoyed Katie's talk but doesn't want a job in the nature sector, no matter what job that you do decide to do, you can always do it in a way that helps nature. My daughter is 11. She wants to be a fashion designer. She's looking at using renewable materials in her design. So it's just, there's everything you can do that you can think, well, how I might not want to do that job, but if I do this job, which I really want to do, how can I do it in the best way for the environment? But Katie's covered a load of really interesting sounding careers there. And I'm kind of jealous as well for her work, especially with the badgers and the waterfalls. But I'm going to work on my echidna releases anyway for the country. So just before I thank you all and thank Katie for your time this morning, I just want to mention that sadly, obviously Ashley couldn't join us, which is, as Katie mentioned, her marine colleague. Um, but to temper that, we have two marine sessions today. So there's one at 11 o'clock with Emily Cunningham, live from Cornwall, and another one up again in Scotland with Protecting Scotland Seas with the Marine Conservation Society. So if anybody is particularly keen on marine biology roles or marine roles, then tune in for those two. So that's 11 and 11:15, 1:15. You'll find those tickets available on Eventbrite. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's tuned in and for your questions. It's really cool that you're so enthusiastic and you've put so many questions across. And I hope that you now understand the field of careers in energy companies and the transmitting of energy and how that relates to nature and ecology as well. So thank you. And a massive thank you to Katie for obviously your enthusiasm, not only for protecting nature, but obviously joining us today to talk about it as well.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone for joining. I think it's really encouraging to see how many people have joined today. And yeah, just on this journey together, which is very exciting.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Katie. And for those who obviously want to access the resource for the activity to do afterwards, then please feel free from the Green Jobs for Nature website now. And this recording will be available by this afternoon as well for anybody who wants to rewatch it. But all that leaves me to do is say thank you and have a good day.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye.